Good morning, colleagues. I'd like to welcome you to this very important webinar discussing the crucial subject of public employment service support for green skills and jobs. And I'm sure we're going to have an extremely interactive and informative discussion. I'd like to first start by introducing Isabel Rest and Francesco Lo Sapio from the Public Employment Service Network Secretariat in Brussels, and ask them to introduce the event with some opening remarks. Thank you very much, Isabel.
Thank you, Iman. Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to today's webinar on PES support on green skill and jobs. We are delighted to have with us representatives from PES, but also colleagues from across the wider employment ecosystem. I would like to say a few words about the context of this webinar linked to the EU. As you know, the political guidelines by the European Commission 2024-2029 reinforce the goals of the European Green Deal, namely that member states have pledged reduced net greenhouse gas emission by at least 55% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. And the European Commission has adopted a set of proposals to make the EU's climate, energy, transport and taxation policies. You have maybe seen a very recent report published yesterday, actually, by the European Environment Agency. This report highlights that significant progress have been made in reducing greenhouse gas emission and air pollution, but it also stresses that climate change and environmental degradation pose a direct threat to Europe's competitiveness. Contributing to the Green Deal features among the objectives of the decision establishing the PES network. In this context, the Council recommendation on ensuring a fair transition towards climate neutrality called on member states to build PES capacities in this field. PES in member states are still expected to support labor market transition and skills intelligence. We know that PES play a significant role in identifying and anticipating skills needs, increasing matching efficiency for green jobs, supporting job-to-job transition into green and green-driven occupation, equipping workers with in-demand skills, and ensuring the green imperative, a powerful driver of innovation, competitiveness, and new opportunities for workers, job seekers, and employers alike. The PES and the PES network are well aware of this, and they continue to work actively in this area alongside many other priorities. Today's webinar will provide some illustration of the activities of PES and the PES network in the green transition. In the second part of the webinar, we will share with you some elements of a toolkit. And now I give my colleague Francesco Lo Sapio, who will say a few words about the first part of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. Thank you, Iman, and colleagues. Good morning from my side as well. So when we discuss about PES activities in the green transition and PES services for the green transition, one key element is the question of definitions. So what do we mean when we talk about green skills? What do we mean when we talk about green jobs? How do we define them? Because that's what helps operationally making the services then operational. And when it comes to the definition, we have a very diverse situation in the EU, in Europe, where results show that most of PESs do not really have a formal definition of green jobs, and few have the same for green skills. And those who actually have a definition employ different methods and different methodologies, whether based on sectors, based on occupations, based on tasks. So there is a lack of harmonization and a lack of standardization of definitions across the different PESs. Now, at the European level, the situation is a bit clearer. The European classification of skills and occupations, the so-called ESCO classification, does include and does offer a definition of green skills. It offers a data set of green skills, and due to its particular combination of data between occupational skills, it allows to show the greenness of occupations, to show what are the green tasks that are related to a particular occupation. This is a tool that the ESTO classification has developed in response to the call from the 2020 European Skills Agenda for the taxonomy of green skills. However, despite what we have at European level, a common standard across public employment services would definitely be beneficial in this domain. It will help indeed bridging the gap across PESs. It will help those public employment services who have not yet started working on this topic to have a point of departure. And due to the interoperability and connections between the European level and the national level, it will help classification systems from the public employment services to talk to each other. So this is why over the past, I would say, 2 years, the working group on taxonomy, which is a working group, an informal working group of the PES Network, including taxonomy and classification experts of the different PESs, worked on this particular topic, a common benchmark on green skills and jobs, which allow PESs then to come up with a standardized methodology to define those and implement it in their services. And this is why we are here today to present in the first part of the webinar this work, and hopefully you will find it very interesting and relevant also for your own work. So thank you very much, colleagues, and I wish you a very interesting webinar.
Thank you very much, Isabel and Francesco, for really doing a splendid job in setting the scene for this event. There's a much wider policy context, as Isabel very helpfully outlined for us, and Francesco made the crucial point that we need to absolutely have a common view eventually about what we mean by green skills and green jobs, and a way of having a common assessment of them to ensure that the European labour market can embrace this important agenda collectively. So I'm sure we'll be having an extremely informative event. We'll be combining presentations with some very practical insights from public employment services who've applied them in their own member state context. We'd very much encourage you as participants in this event to reflect and share thoughts on the implementation of the outputs which are presented perhaps in your national context. So with that in mind, we'll be asking some questions via Slido, and we'll also be asking you to pose your questions on Slido. You'll be able to vote on questions suggested by other people to move them up, so that myself and colleagues can get a feel for what are the most important and pressing issues you wish to be considering this morning. You can do this by visiting Slido at a link #PES_green_skills, and this will be appearing on a slide shortly, so you'll be able to see the code for connection. And so please pose your questions in Slido and don't put them in the MS Teams chat box, because we won't actually be able to identify them and pose them to our colleagues this morning. So we'll have a very brief run through the agenda for the webinar. We're going to have an initial poll at the moment, just to get a very, very initial view about where you are with this topic in your own organisation. We'll be then having a presentation on some very important work about how green jobs have been defined following some outputs from the working group. We'll then be looking in a little bit more detail at the very useful toolkit that hopefully colleagues have had a chance to look at to help you apply some useful shared learning in your own organisation. Then we'll be having a input from a collaboration between the Austrian PES and the Environmental Foundation organisation, who've worked very closely with the PES in Austria to further this agenda. And then a very interesting input from our colleagues in Poland, who've been working on a strategic forecasting system. And we'll then have another opportunity for questions and answers, and then wrapping up with a brief summary of our learnings from this morning. So perhaps we could move to our initial poll, if possible. Thank you. What we'd like to do is to find out exactly where you are in your organisation at the moment in terms of your integrating the green skills and jobs agenda within your own organisational context. So are you at a stage where there is really no integration yet at the moment? You're not really considering this agenda? Are you initially raising awareness and starting to explore subjects, but you haven't really got a particularly structured approach within your own systems? Are you beginning implementation and starting to consider what kind of strategies could be adopted to really raise the agenda for green skills and jobs? Are you at a stage of sort of maybe moving a bit further in implementation, or are you really fully embedding green skills and jobs into your organization? So at the moment, a few PES really at the full implementation stage. More maybe have moved on to sort of moderate implementation. A large number of PES really starting to think about how they can start to move from strategies to including green skills and jobs, perhaps in their operational context. Very, very few PES at the moment not really familiar with any kind of approach at all. So most people are actually moving on this agenda. Largest group really at the initial awareness stage, starting to explore the subject, but hopefully learning a lot more perhaps from this morning's event to think about how they can take it forward. So thank you very much for your initial thoughts, extremely useful. I think we can summarize that people are probably not just on the starting line, but not yet really, in most cases, moving to implementation, even though quite a lot of PES are, but very few organisations around Europe at the moment at the stage of fully embedding and internalising this agenda into their systems. So thank you very much indeed for your initial comments. Now I'd like to move on to our first input session this morning. We're going to have, first of all, some observations from Petter Nygard from Sweden, who has done a very, very admirable job steering and chairing the work of the taxonomy group for now 2 years, directly leading to the outputs into the toolkit. Then we're going to have some more detailed analysis from Francesco Verna, who was the technical expert supporting the group. And Francesco, a thematic expert, is a professor of economics at the University of Milan. He's an applied economist, and he's got a particular interest in environmental economics, labour economics, and the intersection between those two disciplines, which is exactly what we're seeking to do with developing the taxonomy and indeed the toolkit. So thank you very much indeed. So over to you. Thank you very much, Petter. Thank you.
Thank you, Eamon. My name is Petter Nygård. I'm the chair of the PES Network Working Group. We established the working group in 2020, and for the last couple of years we worked more dedicatedly on green jobs definitions. We are comprised of, I think, around 13 PES at the moment, so we have fairly broad representation. Very happy about that. So we set out in 2023, where we decided to look at a task-based approach to define green jobs, and this is presented in the output paper, of course. We worked with the thematic expert. We'll hear from Francesco Verna and his colleague Aurélien Sousset, who helped us very much with this work. What was really interesting about this work is that we had the opportunity to pilot the approach as well. So it was just not about developing a methodology, but also that we as PES could do hands-on work actually to see how can we use this method. Then of course the next step is to implement in our PES services. That is another question, but I think the strength of this methodology is that we have worked on it together, many PES, like I said, 13 and more, and in very close cooperation with ESCO as well. And ESCO has been a natural partner for the working group since we started, since we work on taxonomies in general. So I'm very happy with the work we've done, and we try to see if we can continue the work, perhaps more informally, on a bilateral basis, country to country. But again, that we have agreed upon a common approach is very positive. So very happy with that. We'd like to continue the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're bringing Francesco for some more detailed analysis. Thank you very much.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me well? All good?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So all the other presenters already give a very nice introduction. So let me go directly to the points of my talk. I will just try to briefly summarize why we choose the task approach. And I will try to briefly summarize how we try to implement the task approach using the ESCO data. Next slide, please. So already Isabel said to you how important is the transition for a green economy for Europe to reconcile the need to create jobs, to decarbonize, and to increase competitiveness. So this is going to be spread across different sectors, from buildings, the circular economy, decarbonizing manufacturing, transports, of course, the energy system, power generation. And so this will be a systemic change. Okay, when you have a systemic change, you have to think about this in terms of creating both the material infrastructure for the systemic change. I mean, when you want to integrate renewable energy to the grid, you need storage capacity, but also the material infrastructure, and skills and competencies are the cornerstone of this. Okay, so key questions are here: in which training program we have to invest money, which worker requires more retraining and reskilling to be able to operate new technologies, for instance, in the car production or in building retrofitting. Next slide, please. Okay, so here I just want to make the motivation a bit bolder. Here is an evaluation of the Obama American Recovery and Investment Act that have 1/4 of expenditure devoted to the green economy. This is a published paper in the Brookings paper on economic activities. And here I want to show you a very important fact from our paper, a very important result, that the effect of this plan has been much larger in regions that have a high prevalence of green skills. So where there are the skills that are suitable to operate green technologies. And we measure them in other papers using a very accurate matching of tasks and skills in the labor market. So the effect, so actually this paper suggests strongly that investing in skills to favor a transition toward a new technology pay off a lot. And there is a new paper on the digital technology using worker level data from Netherlands that leads to very, very similar results. So targeting skill program to new technologies can pay off a lot. Next slide, please. So the problem here is that we lack a common definition, as the other speaker told before, and so actually this does not allow PES and other actors to design training programs, because basically we don't know which are the jobs more affected by the green transition. These jobs are still a very small share of the total amount of jobs, and then it's very difficult to understand the training requirements of these jobs. Okay, so next slide, please. And so we need a precise definition for green jobs. So actually, in the first step of this very, very interesting 2 years work, also for me, because I also learn a lot from PES. It was very interesting discussion also with the ESCO team. So it was really a stimulating process of mutual learning. So in the first step, we try to make an assessment of where PES stand in terms of definition of green jobs, and try to understand which will be the definition that is more suitable to create a common benchmark. Okay, and so actually, the main conclusion of this first step, where we did also a survey to different PES to understand where they stand, is that the task-based approach is the most suitable, and the reasons are in the next slide, please. The reasons are, I mean, first of all, let me define the task-based approach. In the task-based approach to green jobs that we pioneered with using US data, and that is used now by several international organizations. In this approach, you contrast an idea that a job can be classified as either green or not. And the idea is that the job can be classified as green in a continuous way, looking at the number of tasks that are green for the average worker in that job over the total number of tasks. What is the idea here is that when you look at data, you have, for instance, construction worker, Obviously, construction workers perform both green task and non-green task, depending on the specific workplace where they are located and the specific technology that they use. So actually, here, this index takes the average of workers in a way that are involved in production in green task over the total number of workers. Okay, or you can think about car repairer of electric vehicles or non-electric vehicle, and this is a bit the idea of this index. So in this for this index at the occupation level, you have that the index capture the average share of time of the worker in that occupation that the worker in that occupation spend in green activities. And actually, you can also see it as the share of workers using green technology over the total number of workers in that specific occupation. Why is good this approach? Because it's very flexible, actually. You can also allow this approach to become a binary approach where you define occupation as green or not, simply taking a threshold of the greenness index below 0.5 is green, above 0.5 is green, below is not green. So actually, and also it's flexible because you can focus on a subset of tasks that are specific to certain technology. So imagine, again, you are interested in the transition in the car industry, so you can just select a subset of tasks that are related to the car sector. And this is possible because we have more and more data that try to characterize what the workers do in the workplace, so the task. And these data are available both from the excellent work of ESCO in Europe and also from online job vacancy database that you certainly know. Okay, next slide, please. So here, just let me emphasize even more the advantages of this approach. So first of all, is more accurate in estimating the size of the green economy. This will be clear in the next slide. Is granular, dynamic, and complementary to an occupation-based approach because it allows also to switch to an occupation-based approach, and is dynamic because it allows the task to evolve over time. So the task content of jobs, and we know this for all the work on digital technologies, is changing rapidly over time, and this approach allows to do this without stick to a definition of green jobs that is too narrow. Is highly politically acceptable, and here we have a very interesting discussion with PES, because I mean, labeling a job as green or not can be contentious, right? Because I mean, you are saying that some people is better than others. Well, is not really nice. Okay, and is more suitable when you lack official data. You know, occupational classifications slowly move. That's why also we have ESCO, and so actually this is something that allow to be more flexible, and moreover has been already used by several PES, including PES Germany that have a very similar indicator, and several others. Okay. Finally, it can be implemented using ESCO data, as I will show you, and this can favor a cross-country comparison, the establishment of a benchmark that should not be necessarily adopted by every country, but a country, for instance, like Germany, that have another definition of green task can compare with this benchmark. Okay, so next slide, please. So here you can see the share of green jobs using different approaches, and you can see that the share of green jobs using a task approach always varies between 1% and 3%, whereas, and this is in line with the share of green production. Okay, that we have several researchers have built databases on green production, especially for Europe, including with my research team, and the share is really in line. Whereas if you use an occupation-based approach, so you consider construction workers fully green, you end up having almost 20% of workers that are in green jobs, which is really not realistic. Okay, and because we know that the green technologies are not still diffused widely. Next slide. So in the second step, we try to implement this approach using ESCO. And so what we did, we use advanced machine learning techniques here, especially thanks to the work of the other thematic expert, Aurélien Saussé, from LSE. We work together with PES. What we try to classify the PES skills, existing PES skills, as green or not, matching the text of the PES skill of the ESCO skill, sorry, not PES skills, with the green text that we know that is reliable, especially text on green patents or text on ONET, which is the counterpart of ESCO for the US, where they have a very reliable definition of green task. Okay, and so actually after this we end up having a list of ESCO skills that we can consider green that can be used then to build the greenness in task intensity indicator. If you go to the next slide, I just give you a brief snapshot, very simple, of how the algorithm works. So we have the ESCO skill database, and then we have these two sources of green text, the ONET green task and the green tech patterns. And then we have this semantic analysis that assign a score matching one line of text in these two sources and the ESCO task with a score. And so actually the interesting feature of this is very transparent, because for each matching you have a score. So you can say, I like this. You can also manually validate this, right? So you can say this score is good, this score is bad, and then you can go back to the algorithm to change the algorithm in such a way that deliver results that are more aligned with the human expertise. Okay, and so then we have this green skill classification, and this is the second step. So if you go to the next slide, please. These are some examples of skills that are selected, like solar energy, of course, environmental policy, promote sustainable energy, or here we distinguish between those skills that are selected because of the similarity with task in ONET, and those skills that are selected because of the similarity with the patent text. Okay, so design of smart grids was more related to the patent text, for instance. Okay, so next slide, please. So actually then, the third and last step of our work was to open up a bit more the discussion to the PES members, and so to do a piloting. So we try to see how this approach and this new list of potential green skills work, and how people of PES see this list. Okay, so actually the PES divided into two groups. I mean, some PES did both, like, I mean, German PES, I think, did both, and a couple of others, I really now don't remember. But I mean, in one case, we have a manual assessment of this list of green skills. So the PES were asked to say whether they consider these skills as green or not. Of course, we add other skills to make a bit the thing more interesting. So we have also a kind of trial of the assessment of what is green in a way. And for the other, instead, the other piloting was to try to implement the algorithm using, to simplify, national level data. Okay, so the data that are available at the country level. Okay, so task data at the country that are for the countries that have the task data or skill data, and they are linkable to occupational data, we try to directly implement the algorithm there. So I will focus a bit more on the first option, so this manual assessment. So the interesting point is that there was a full agreement among all the PES that took this approach on 3/4 of the skills that we consider as green were considered as green also by all the PES. And then we have a very interesting discussion where we realize that there are deep cultural differences on the understanding of what is green across EU countries, which reflect also the industrial structure of the country. Of course, nuclear energy, we know that is not green for countries that experience badly the Chernobyl shock, whereas is green for most countries that have nuclear energy, especially France. Okay, so next slide, please, and I will conclude with the next slide. So here we have some recommendation from the piloting. So still this definition, so this list of green skills that can be used to build the greenness indicator at the occupational level can be refined. I mean, one thing that we realize is that we are expert on this, we are expert on green jobs and skill, but actually we will need also expert in environmental science and in climate science to understand a rapidly evolving field, and really to understand whether a specific activity can be considered as green or not. For instance, it was very contentious, all the activity related to forestry or to ecosystem services, biodiversity. There was not a common understanding of whether they are green or not. Then, with the help of the ESCO team, we realized that this definition can be improved, integrating online job vacancy information that give us a frequency on the extent to which one of the skills selected is really important in the labor market, in a sense is really posted as a skill important by companies. So we also realized that the job title can be used more to for a first screening to classify an occupation that is green or not. Finally, I mean, we realized that the approach is very flexible to be adapted to different textual source, and that perhaps would be helpful to enrich the textual source in ESCO with more description to gather also more information on this type of exercise, where we try to classify the skills that are important not only for the green transition, but in general for green technology. So the last point I want to make is that this is a kind of best practice, as I see. I mean, in my understanding of best practice, because it was really a process of mutual learning involving actors from statistical office, I mean, in a way, ESCO, thematic expert, and people really working using this definition and helping workers to find a job in practice. Okay, so it was really stimulating, and I think this type of process can be extended next time, perhaps to a different technology or a different labor market challenge. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much indeed, Francesco, for providing us with such a rich amount of information, explaining it extremely clearly, and also sticking exactly to time. So thank you. That's all extremely helpful. Before we move on to the Q&A to look at your questions that you've put into the Slido, I'd like to briefly ask a colleague, Dirk Richter from the German Public Employment Service first, if he could perhaps just offer us one or two quick observations about what he really took from the piloting, and then following Dirk, perhaps to bring in Anne Albrecht from the Flanders PES in Belgium, VDAB, with the same question. And particularly, I think I found this task-based approach particularly interesting, actually, very practical and a very, very good way of testing the outputs from the working group. So perhaps Dirk first, and I'll bring in Anne. Thank you very much, Dirk.
Yeah, thank you very much. For us, it was very interesting to check if the algorithm also finds out the same green skills we have in our classification. This was not always the case, but for us it was then learning that maybe the identified non-green skills came mostly from misinterpretation of skills. And in Germany, most of our skills don't have any description except our green and digital skills. And in our view, yeah, this makes it quite hard to find out green skills. So for us, the learning is, I think, probably better resource to identify green skills could be achieved by present descriptions for all skills, and I think we will fill the gap as an upcoming task.
Thank you very much indeed, Dirk. Very interesting. Perhaps, Anne, could I just have a couple of your main takeaways from your participation in the group as well? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I want to thank Peter and Francesco for leading us to this important work, because at VDAB we were working on future-proof skills, but we didn't call them green. So now with the algorithm, we have an indication of it. And yeah, I also want to say a few words about the workload. It didn't take that much time. The algorithm was applied on our taxonomy by Aurélien Saucy, and we assessed the results of the algorithm with our team. And yeah, it was really, it was an intensive work, but it was really done very quickly. So yeah, in short, the pilot took some effort, but it was very well rewarding, and I would certainly like to encourage other PES to use the algorithm on their national taxonomy. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and extremely interesting. Perhaps now we can move to some questions. We've got some questions coming in Slido, so thank you very much for that. First of all, Francesco, I think a couple of questions for you, actually, following a very interesting presentation. Is there already really a final identification of green skills in ESCO? Have you got a view that we've now got a really final view about that ESCO definition of skills coming in place? And secondly, is there thinking about perhaps updating ESCO to take into account the increased learning we've got from the green agenda going forward? So perhaps two questions there, Francesco, for you. Thank you. So Francesco Lapensa, perhaps from the Commission, could you perhaps come in on those points, maybe? A Commission colleague?
Yes, I can come in on this. So
Yeah.
on both questions actually, Iman. Thank you very much. So on the first one, from Claudia, this work is going to be implemented in a version of ESCO that we are releasing as we speak. Work is ongoing, so we can expect this to be out by the end of November. We are really finishing the very last details, so you will see that the improvements, so the work from the working group allow us to improve the current list that we have published in ESCO, and this will be published in November. And when it comes to the second question, this is an ongoing process from our side. So the list of green skills and the definition of green skills is constantly updated in a way. So there's no final identification because it's a work in progress exercise. So every version of ESCO there is a new list. The list is updated because, of course, new skills emerge. And the work that was done when it comes to the identifying the shareness of green tasks in an occupation is also something that will be constantly monitored and updated. Because we noticed that in the end, results are heavily influenced by the way skills and occupations are linked as part of the ESCO classification. So we can say that there's no final point of destination for this work in ESCO. It will be constantly updated, and every version of ESCO there will be an improved data set available for stakeholders. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much indeed, Francesca. Indeed, of course, as the labour market alters ever more quickly, it's ever more dynamic, ESCO will need to actually keep adapting to keep pace with that. Perhaps a question for Francesco Vonner, if I may, actually, just one final question before we move on to a presentation from Nicola on the toolkit. Very briefly, Francesco, could you offer us a view as to how we can ensure that the taxonomy can maintain its adaptability going forward? Perhaps just in a couple of sentences, what can we do to make sure that this excellent momentum that you've started can continue going forward? Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is a thanks. Is a very, very good question, and the answer actually is not easy. I think my experience with all this classification of green jobs, tasks, and skills is that the most important part is transparency. Okay, for some people that have no experience with algorithm, with advanced statistical tools, this seems kind of black box. But then, I mean, we have some underlying criteria to then classify a skill as green or not. And I think it would be perhaps nice to really publish this criteria and to have to allow people on the perhaps ESCO website to choose which criteria to use for the research that or the work that this person is going to do. So I think this is going to ensure also that the classification is constantly up to date, and the criteria that drives the selection of the green skill. And then of course there can be the official definition that has also a part that is decided by expert as it should be. So actually my advice is to try to publish as many data as you can, and as many criteria, the data as disaggregated as possible. So for instance, ONET was delivered in a version where you have a score given by expert on the skill of an occupation, and a score given by people working at the occupation. Okay, so a bit something similar that will constantly be updated, so to allow people to work with more granular data and to understand better what's behind the selection of specific skills as green or not.
Thank you. I found your description of the green task intensity score particularly helpful, actually. I was involved in the original Green Skills for Jobs working group about 15 years ago, and we very much struggled with the very binary approach, are jobs and skills green or not, actually, and that really kind of impeded their progress. So following up from that, I wondered if you, or perhaps if not a Commission colleague, would be able to offer us a view as to whether it's now in the work programme to incorporate a green task intensity score in ESCO. Will that be published at all?
I can take this, Simon. Yes, it will.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We have it in the pipeline to make this data available. Now we're looking at how to do it in the most in the easiest way. So perhaps it will be data set that could be downloadable from the portal of the ESCO, so-called ESCO portal, the website of the classification. But yes, it will be published together with the minor version.
Thank you very much indeed. That's extremely helpful. I think we've got time perhaps just for one final question. If a colleague would like to, a burning question that you've been thinking about during the very interesting input so far. Anything somebody would like to ask one of our colleagues on the findings from the group before we move on?
Yes, here from Romania, from the Public Employment Service. If I may add, maybe because right now we are in the full implementation of the twin transition, the digitalization also, in my view, a green, let's say, sector. Maybe instead of collecting so many data, granular data, which is, supplementing the administrative burden for the countries, maybe we can just slow down a little bit and looking at the sector to create, let's say, a significant demand on skills and on occupations. And maybe at that time, when we have a significant amount of this kind of sectors, greening sectors, maybe then we can think to indeed to define or to find a common definition at the European level. Because right now, if we can see, and I was participating to Brussels, indeed we don't have a common definition yet. Also, we must think in terms of national specific conditions, so on and so forth. And that's
okay,
why
thank you.
I'm
Sorry to interrupt there, but thank you. That's very, very helpful, actually. I'm just seeing that following your initial comments, perhaps Francesca would like to come back on that, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Very, very helpful comments. Francesco, please. Thank you.
Thanks for the very interesting comment. I mean, I think here is a chicken egg problem. If you don't have the right skills to develop new technologies, you will not attract companies that will start these new technologies, right? So actually, the key point here is that to anticipate the skill need, to attract companies to invest in Europe, because we know that we lag behind on several green technologies, unfortunately. And so actually, this is critical to anticipate the skill need, even if the size of the green economy is small. The second point I would like to make is that there is a lot of research in labor economics that shows that the occupation, rather than the sector, provide much more information on the success of the worker, because it conveys the skill set, the really skill set of the worker. And so this is the main asset of the work.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Again, I think we're finishing there on two crucial points. It's got to be in the interest of a specific employer, hasn't it, to really invest in developing the kind of workforce capability. And also, it's a bit of a chicken and egg, but without pre-investment in skills, we're not going to actually have the right environment to sort of benefit from the opportunities that are being presented. So thank you very much indeed. Thanks, colleagues, for your very, very interesting questions, and also to our presenters for setting the scene so nicely for us. I'd now like to introduce Nicola Jewell, the thematic expert, who will be presenting some of the background to the production of the very, very helpful toolkit on public employment service support for green skills and jobs. Nicola is co-founder and a managing partner of Economics Research and Consulting, and she's been, and her colleagues have been involved in lots and lots of work on labour market research and the contribution of public employment services to delivering employment and training policy for many years. And she's been particularly looking in recent times on analysing unemployment in the EU and skills development, particularly thinking about skills forecasting. So all of that, of course, is very, very helpful background feeding into the development of the very, very helpful toolkit. So thank you very much, Nicola. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eamon, for your introducing words. So yeah, I will present you now the toolkit which we have elaborated for public employment services, and not only, I come back to that. I think this toolkit come quite timely because, as we have seen in the poll, public employment services and other key stakeholders who are with us today are kind of emerging, awareness is rising, some have moderate implementation, all that saying there is practices outside. Many PES still are in the process of building up their knowledge and capacities for shaping their responses and their measures to support the greening of the labor market, so equipping workers with the skills employers will need. So it is meant to be a practical guide for public employment services, which is featuring promising practices which we collected from public employment services, which is the whole work based on desk research. And there has also been inputs from the taxonomy PES Network Working Group, as well as a known task force of PES for elaborating this toolkit. So, and who is really this toolkit for? I already mentioned for the public employment services, of course. So here, staff and management position at all levels, headquarters, regional and local levels, but also for the practitioners on the ground. So employment counselors on the one hand side, but on the other hand side, also for staff working in the labor market information system, as we have seen the impressive work which has been done and which is still continued to be done with identifying, defining green tasks in occupation and therefore so for building the evidence and analyzing of course the labor market information system of PES is crucial, and the staff working there. But the toolkit is also for other organizations who are working closely with the public employment services on the green transitions, such as training institutions, sector organizations, the social partners, NGOs, as well as local stakeholders. Next slide, please. So we see that where we are now, from a strategic point of view, PES are still kind of working on their strategies, but what we see that when they are kind of identifying their strategy, there is a strong focus on reskilling of the workforce and in cooperation with the employers, which comes at the highest activities they do. Then defining green jobs to inform public employment services is done by some public employment services, but much fewer. And fewer PES have really a green transition strategy in place. So these are the results from the PES capacity report from 2023. Next slide, please. So what is important for PES strategies is to move towards strategic approaches with a focus on defining green jobs. So PES strategies approaches are often coherent or triggered by wider initiatives. So, for example, UN development goals or the green transition, the EU Green Deal. They are developed in partnership for working to capture trends in the green transition. For example, in France with the National Observatory with for jobs and occupations for the green economy. And as we already have heard, there is no common definition of green jobs across the EU, but still it is a complex task for the PES to identify them in their context. As you already heard, ESCO is helping a lot to identify green skills. And the PES Network Taxonomy Working Group conducted pilots, as we already heard, on task-based approaches to define green jobs. Next slide, please. So what are the recommendations for developing strategy is, first of all, to be coherent with the strategic approaches of other stakeholders, for example, national, regional, sector level, and also to establish dialogue and partnership with other stakeholders. That has been done, for example, in the regional approaches in Germany for the coal phase out, where public employment services have cooperated with research, with employers, with local stakeholders to manage the coal phase out. So what the next recommendation is really also to invest still in more analysis on the green transition. So here one good example we have is from Poland, where there is a project really for the strategic forecasting for green and digital skills. Then it's recommended to promote the green transition among staff and clients via PES internal sustainability approaches on the one hand side, and on the other hand side to build up capacity. For example, in France, the PES is offering 1 hour short training courses on green occupations for their staff. Then finally, to implement this strategic approach, you need financing. And here we have example of tackling to raise and to use additional innovative funding, for example, in the context of the structuring going on in the oil shale sector in Estonia, where the Just Transition Fund has been used to support training for job transitions. Next slide, please. Some examples, we have already talked a lot on green skills. So let me here propose one definition. So again, there is no common definition on green skills, but there's a very useful definition of CEDEFOP, which defines green skills encompassing knowledge, abilities, values, and attitudes needed to live in, develop, and support society with which reduces the impact of human activity on the environment. So there is a need, as already said, to identify skills needs, to anticipate skills needs. The Polish example has already been named, and I think we will get more insights on that later. And what is also important is the use then of green skills, and we have examples of public employment services who are more advanced in the definition of green skills and inform about it in their career guidance tools. So one example is in France, another one is the German Berufenet, which all incorporate green skills in their career guidance tools. Next slide. So recommendations for public employment services on green skills is to get insight on the type of skills needed and to get a deep insight. And this can encompass, for example, generic skills, which would encompass soft skills. That would also encompass some technical skills, but also can encompass values about the greening, and on the one hand side also to get better insight and identify specialized skills for new occupations. Then likely to create new the green the general forecast of the impacts of the green transition is generally to create jobs. There will be some jobs who will disappear, but what all forecast studies say is that there is mainly a big need for skills adaptation and also new skills for new occupations. So this is also the forecasts vary from one country to another. These are kind of big messages which come around. Then we recommend to use data to skills anticipation, and we have we have interesting examples from France, for example, to use big data, to use AI applied to online job vacancies to identify green skills. Here again, ESCO is of great help as well. And also recommendation to focus and to identify portable skills. So here, for example, in Spain, there has been work going on to identify which occupations in traditional sectors possess skills which are interesting and for the green activity. For example, if you take the electronic components and electricians traditional sector, they have relevant skills for components for wind turbines, for example. Next slide, please. And they show other examples. So then what type of services and measures to offer to job seekers and employers? So if we look at the target group of job seekers and workers at risk of becoming unemployed, we can identify different PES services and have good example of ALMPs which are implemented. So the one are targeted at workers at risk of becoming unemployed. So here the services are to identify, and the activities of PES are to identify sectors and workers affected, and managing career transition via skills assessment, work on skills development, geographical mobility. Then there are examples of measures for vulnerable group of job seekers. Measures include employment incentives for these target groups, skills assessment, upskilling and reskilling, as well as matching services. One example would be the Swedish Relocate program, where unemployed people in regions with very high unemployment are helped to relocate to a region in the northern Sweden where new industries for the green transition are being built up. Then we have example for needs. For example, the Intercept project, which is equipping needs with green skills training and work placements. We have example of promoting entrepreneurship and business starts up in green jobs. And we have also examples of activities for employees in all occupation, which includes career counseling, for example, as well as shorter generic trainings. Next slide,
May
please.
I ask you to conclude with the next slide, please, Nicola, because we're unfortunately running a bit short of time. So perhaps if you could just talk us through one more. Thanks very much.
Okay, so the one more is talking a lot about job seekers, now talking about employers. What are or what can PES do is segmenting employers and offering their services depending on where they stand in the green transition, collaborating with the employers to identify the skills needs, cooperating with the employers in providing and in shaping the right contents of the training, and also supporting employers to develop skills profiles for shortage professions. So,
thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Nicola, for a very rich and helpful presentation. Colleagues, please keep posting your questions in Slido, hashtag PES_green_skills. Perhaps before we move on to the next presentation briefly, again, I'd commend the toolkit to you all. Clearly, it's very well designed to meet the needs of public employment service staff at all levels. And given from our Slido poll and also Nicola's presentation, many PES appear to be very much now laying the groundwork for a kind of an approach where they'll be moving to incorporate more green skills consideration into their work going forward, and the toolkit can clearly be a great help for PES who are seeking to kind of take this agenda forward, and also a couple of references to some very practical use of European Union funds to embed the green skills and jobs agenda in employment services. With that in mind, I'd now like to move on to our next presentation, where we're going to be hearing from a couple of colleagues from Austria, Thomas Mudd from the Public Employment Service in Austria, and a colleague, Paul Kolfer. Paul is the Managing Director of the Environmental Foundation, and Thomas will be introducing a very interesting partnership between the PES and Paul's organisation, which has been developing an Environmental Foundation programme, which offers work-based training in the environmental sector for people who are unemployed. And very importantly, I think, considering the kind of overall approach dealing with long-term unemployment and youth unemployment, tailored training and internship in companies. So thank you very much, Thomas. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Yes, perfect. Hello, I'm Thomas from the Federal Office of the Austrian Public Employment Service. It's the headquarters of the Austrian Public Employment Service, and it's a great pleasure for me to announce Mr. Paul Köfler from, you said it before, from Auflab. He's the managing director of Auflab, and he speak about an environmental foundation. In Austria, employment foundations represent a labor market policy instrument that has been tried and tested for decades. Since the 1980s, almost 100,000 people have benefited from these measures. Auflab is a proven partner of the PES Austria in this regard. The PES in general, and especially in the PES Vienna, have been working with Auflab for over 10 years. National foundation measures, including the Environmental Foundation, have been developed jointly, and Mr. Paul Köfler from Auflab will report on how this creates win-win situations for the unemployment, the economy, and last but not least, the environmental. Yes, and I think this was my introduction, and the floor is yours, Mr. Köfler.
So, hello again, and I'm already known now, and it's a pleasure for me to give you an overview of Environmental Foundation and to use the next 10 minutes, and hopefully it will be successful. So, Environmental Foundation in German, Umweltstiftung, is what we want to provide: qualifications for sustainable, safe careers. And before I will continue my presentation, I want to introduce Jacqueline. Jacqueline turns on the power, how you can see. In the next 60 seconds, she will inform you about her motivation, about her goals, and her experiences with the Environmental Foundation. And please to start the short movie.
Hallo, ich bin Jacqueline, ich bin 22 Jahre alt und ich mache die Lehre als Elektrotechnikerin. Nach der Schule habe ich die Lehre als Maschinenbautechnikerin gemacht, danach eine Weiterbildung als Betriebslogistikerin mit dem Staplerschein. Das war nur nicht so meins. Jetzt mache ich über die Umweltstiftung die Lehre als Elektrotechnikerin. Ich habe mich für die Lehre entschieden, weil sie nur 21 Monate dauert und ich danach einen sicheren und gut bezahlten Job habe. Cool ist, dass wenn wir fertig mit einer Baustelle sind, dass die Leute, die dort wohnen, den Strom verwenden können, den wir gelegt haben. Für die Umwelt ist unsere Arbeit wichtig, da wir energieeffiziente Anlagen bauen. Ich glaube, man sollte jungen Frauen mehr zutrauen, da die handwerklich-technischen Berufe auch für uns was sind. Bist auch du neugierig? Dann informier dich bei der Umweltstiftung.
So it was a long way to reach there, and maybe some words how it all started. Aufleb now is existing for more than 30 years and founded by the Austrian Trade Union Confederation and the Chamber of Economics as a response to the expected employment problems in the agri-food sector. There more than 12,000 employees lost their jobs as a necessary reaction of the labor market when Austria joined the European Union, and we were collecting more than 10 million euros at this time. Our payment happened in Austrian shillings, and talking about the year 95 was a lot of money, and it was possible to bring more than 8,400 people back to work with screening activities, career plannings, qualification, job seeking activities. And in total, in the last 30 years, because we developed this labor market instrument, we supported more than 14,000 participants with a success rate from 60% up to 87%, depending on the target group. So we have foundations, for example, for immigrants, and there the success rate is around 60%, measured by the Public Employment Service. So next slide, please. And all the knowledge we were collecting in these 30 years was we were going in the planning of the Environmental Foundation, and it took place, became part of the National Just Transition Action Planning. So we are talking about transition towards climate justice in business and life, and to offer appropriate qualifications in the ecological area. So the result, the Environmental Foundation, and daily we have around 300 active participants doing qualifications for the environmental. So what does it mean when we are talking about the Environmental Foundation? Just in short words, we want to support the economic sector in the environmental field by supporting unemployeds with suitable qualification, and the combination of tailored practical and theoretical training makes it possible that both sides, the future employee and the participant, will find a way to build a base for a fully insured employment relationship. So this Environmental Foundation is a kind of job guarantee for our participants, which was a challenge to define what means green job, what is the possible qualification. And so together with the Public Employment Service, we created the qualification catalog. And right now we are offering around 213 possible qualifications. And here the most demanded qualifications like automotive electrician, bicycle mechanics, but also bus drivers, photovoltaic technicians, electricians. We have qualifications, building, ceiling and window montage, horticulture, forester, and waste management officers. We would like to support in special women. So our goal is to reach a quota of 40% for women's, and we are doing special events organized also with the Public Employment Service, where we bring our testimonials, so female participants telling about their motivation, what's going on, and to motivate women. One thing we know, people are different, and so also unemployed, they have expectations, they bring in different qualifications. Also, not each and everybody has the chance to take a long qualification. So we defined different qualification levels from 13 weeks up to 209 weeks. So 3 months up to 4 years. And the low-level qualification, the specialist assistant, is a short-level qualification up to 9 months. And in the next step, the extraordinary apprenticeship. So you can learn the complete profession, and how Jacqueline was telling, it takes her, means it took her, because she's already in a job, 21 months to finish a complete qualification program and to call herself technician. If you bring already a suitable base qualification, is the chance to take a higher qualification program up to 6 months, like for photovoltaic installations, or under certain circumstances, it's possible also to finish studies at university up to 4 years. The important thing is that it's in each and every case a combination of practical training and theoretical training. So 66% practical training in the company, which is ensuring a job, and 33% theoretical training.
Unfortunately, Paul, we're running a bit short of time. Perhaps if you wouldn't mind moving to sort of conclude on the PES slide on cooperation.
Close to the ending.
Perfect, thank you.
So,
yeah, thank you.
Oops. Not so close to the ending. Maybe some the chance to have to present the cooperation with the local PES, because important is that there must be a job vacancy, and this needs to be reported to the local PES, that the pre-selection process can be started. And this means unemployed, they receive a job offer and they need to apply. So we are going into the matching process with the applicants, and the result hopefully will be educational planning. So we're creating a tailored program, and this will be approved by the Public Employment Service, and PES is monitoring the ongoing process. So we need to forward every certificate, we need to forward reports about the monthly activities, and this is the base of paying the job seekers allowance, the monthly payment by the PES. And to inform you about the financials, this should be the next one, the next slide. Because of the pardon, contribution of the company scholarships, we can support the participants additional with 200 euros a month, at least 200 euros a month, up to 580 euros. And the Public Employment Service cares about the job seekers allowance with minimum 946 euros monthly. Beside this, all the training costs are covered with maximum 7,000 euros per participant, which is coming from the Public Employment Service and the Federal Ministry of Labor and Economic Affairs. So last but not least, some numbers. the so-called success story. We have now 800 starters, and worth to be mentioned, 150 of them are long-term unemployed, and they show the same success rate that the not long-term unemployed. So this means this combination of practical theoretical training seems to be a success story also for long-term unemployed. From 600 finishers, 335 are already in jobs, means success rate for 56%, which is rising. And the energy supply is the most frequented industry with around 200 participants. We are glad that we know now that this environmental foundation will continue for at least 3 years. So hopefully we can tell more success stories in the next years. And my goodbye slide. If you have some questions, please don't hesitate to contact me on my email address. And thanks to give me the time and to present our environmental foundation. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Paul, for an extremely interesting presentation. I think an excellent example of partnership, addressing a high-level European policy objective, obviously the Green Skills and Jobs Agenda, and meeting this policy objective through a programme which actively provides sort of some of the demand for labour through integrating people further from the labour market. You mentioned sort of younger people, people with low skills, and of course also trying to combat gender inequality. So a very cohesive presentation, very nicely presented. Thank you very much indeed. We'd like to conclude our focus on PES practices now with a presentation from Nicolette Nagy-Skarbinska from the Public Employment Service in Poland. She's going to be talking to us for about 10 minutes on work they're doing in the Polish Public Employment Service, looking at forecasting a forecasting system for skills demand in the area of the green and digital economy. Skills forecasting is, of course, absolutely crucial, always difficult. And when we're looking at skills forecasting in an agenda which is moving so rapidly, changing so quickly, it's particularly important, and I suggest particularly challenging. So we're very, very delighted to have Nicolette to advise us on how she's addressing this rather compelling and perhaps difficult issue. Thank you very much, Nicolette. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, hello. Our project team prepare the project. The name of the project is Development and Implementation of a Strategic Forecasting System for Skills Demand in the Green and Digital Economy. Yeah? And the most important information is this project is co-financed by the European Union, the European Funds for Social Development Programme 2021 to 2027. And on this moment, the completion date of project is the end of May the next year. But now we know this date is too short, yeah? So we are currently taking steps to extend the project deadline, and I think it could be the end of the November 2026, yeah? The next slide, please. On our project, we have 4 tasks. And the first task is creating a register of existing labor demand forecasting system, analyzing Polish and international solutions, formulating recommendations regarding the possibility of using data from existing systems to forecast demand for green and digital skills. The second, third, and fourth, it was the connected, and the second is development of a forecasting system concept, including a method for integrating data from existing monitoring and forecasting system in the labor market area. The third, implementation of a forecasting system as an IT tool, making it available to users and disseminating or popularizing the system. And the last is training for forecasting system users. And the next slide, please. And maybe not this, but the next, okay? And we return, okay? Oh, yeah, the next, yes. So maybe, no, the next. Because oh, yes, it's okay, thank you. The first task we finished, and when I finished my presentation, I paste the email, the website address on the chat, and you can read the whole project. And the first task is, as part of the task, it was planned. Developing a definition system and catalog of green and digital skills for methodological purposes. This work will leverage the results of previous work in this area conducted by national and EU institutions, among others. A review will be conducted of existing system for forecasting labor demand and supply, as well as for monitoring the demand for skill and profession. Recommendations will be formulated regarding the possibility of using data from existing system for forecasting the demand for green and digital skills, as well as implementing the tool in existing IT infrastructure. And this report, it was necessary to prepare for the next task of project. And please, the next slide. Yeah, and here we have task second, third, and fourth. And this part will be on this moment prepared by us because we write in Polish, it's a public maybe some publish procurement. Yeah, that's the difficult word. In Polish, the procedures are very long, yeah? So now we prepare the whole documents, and we start the public procurement. And we want this one company do this 3 stages. And the first stage is develop of the forecasting system concept. The result of this stage will be development of a comprehensive concept for a labor market forecasting system using large language models, so popular LLMs. And because we want this, our tool was a new, yes, and the connect. Okay. Stage 2, implementation of the forecasting system. Based on the concept developed and approved by the contracting authority, the contractor will implement a dedicated system that will serve as the foundation and framework for generating forecast. In the system will include definitions and catalogs developed specifically for forecasting green and digital skills, along with their connections to individual sectors of the economy. And stage 3, it could be some training for the users of the system. The next slide, please. And why Poland needs a forecasting system for green and digital jobs. Poland, like other countries, is going through changes driven by the green and digital transformation. So the system will help identify future skill demands, support education and training institutions, help workers and job seekers adapt, inform policy making, accelerate the green and digital transition. And we think it will be a strategic tool And can we back to third slide? Okay, please. Yeah, thank you. And on the end, I want to speak about why we want to do this system. The forecast results generated by the strategic forecasting system for skills demand in the green and digital economy will be used for formulating the assumptions of the national employment policy and will be used by central administration and public employment services to define skill development directions aimed at balancing the supply and demand for green and digital skills. And this data could be shared with other entities such as sectoral competences councils, social partners, non-governmental organizations, educational institutions. And the very important information is that our system, it not be the one new system, but they will integrate with the system which is and the system is owner our ministry, and the system was refound in the last European operation program, knowledge education development. Because we want to use the something what we have and add something new model, yeah, and this is our point. And the system will be available to public employment services employees and of course all interested users. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Niket, for an extremely interesting, thought-provoking and detailed presentation. We are running rather short of time, unfortunately. So some questions in the slide are already posted, and I'll stress these will get back to you, potentially kind of offline if necessary. But perhaps looking at the issue about the attitude of employers, perhaps potentially, Nicola, did you pick up anything about the attitude of employers to the green transformation at all from any of your findings from your work on the toolkit potentially?
No, quite honestly, when the company or the employer involvement were all interested, because we were looking into good practice example and into practice example what public employment services are doing together with the companies, and we could identify these, and I think they were even quite important in specific sectors where there is a lot of structural transition going on. It can be different energy forms, for example, and here employers usually are interested in cooperating also with the training institutions and so on. So that's all what I can say.
Thank you very much. Perhaps I could maybe invite maybe Dirk from Germany or Anne to comment on this issue about the length of vocational training. Would either of you be able to offer a view about any pressures to sometimes reduce the period of training and move people from training into direct employment quickly, longer than perhaps you might prefer as a public employment service? Would perhaps yeah, or Paul, perhaps from Austria, have you had any kind of experience of from your very useful training program, people thinking that vocational training component should be reduced potentially, and that your program should perhaps move people into work directly more rapidly than you do traditionally?
So, no, there is no political pressure to reduce the length. It's much more that we need to be more precise with our target group. This means we are not targeting people up to the age of 19 because they shall take advantage of the regular qualification programs.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful. So people are able to kind of fully appreciate the quality of the input and the time frame for your training program at the moment. Thank you very much indeed. Perhaps one final question for Nicola, if I may, Nicola, before we move on to our final Slido. Would you be able to briefly share any views with us on how adaptable the toolkit is to different national or regional contexts, particularly where the priorities perhaps at a national and regional level can be different in one country, and how, of course, between member states there can be quite considerable differences as well in where the green transition sits in the wider policy agenda. So do you feel the toolkit can be used for PES in very, very different institutional and policy settings to help them on their journey?
Yes, in principle, I think so. Of course, there is no one fit for all kind of response public employment services can do. There always the challenges and what needs to be done very much depends on the sector, on the region, and so on. That's why I think one of the key tools or considerations is to go into partnerships with sectoral and local and regional stakeholders, and so then you have the flexibility to adapt. And I think the toolkit and what we gathered from the different countries are PES operating in different contexts anyway. So we just, picked out a few examples to be presented here, but there are much more examples in the toolkits and delivered by PES in very different contexts and so on. And of course, for example, not all PES will have the possibilities to offer training for people at risk of unemployment because they might not have the mandate. So I think it's up to the PES to check which of the tools and which of the examples could be relevant for them in a specific context. So, but in principle, yes, the toolkit should be relevant for different contexts. That is absolutely necessary, but it needs the reader and the practitioner to choose and to adapt also the tools to its own kind of challenge and context. Thank
you. Thank you very much. Isabel from the Commission, you'd like to offer an observation perhaps on the toolkit. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Nicola, and thank you, Iman. There is also another recommendation in the toolkit that can be useful for, all of the PES and whatever the countries they are in, is about the skills-first approach. This is a strong recommendation from the toolkit to use the skills-based approach in PES to facilitate job-to-job transition, especially for vulnerable people, and to help people to transfer their skill from, classical occupation to green and green-driven occupation. So this is one of the main recommendations we have in this toolkit, and this is applicable to, many environments in Europe.
Thank you very much indeed, Isabel. Interesting, because there's been a perennial debate about skills first or work first, of course, which is going back probably as long as there have been public employment services. And interesting how the green agenda seems to be placing an increasing emphasis on the skills first to prepare people. Nicola, please, we've had another very interesting question in Slido, asking about obviously PES playing a crucial role in anticipating skills needs and supporting career transitions within local labour markets, which will become increasingly important as the green agenda moves forward and the labour market moves more dynamically, particularly linked to AI. And we wondered if you knew of any AI practices, AI tools that are being applied to identify green skills gaps and perhaps help promote portability, movement across transitions across occupations. Any for any insights you can share with us on AI and
Yes.
anticipating skills needs. Thank you.
Yeah, I think PES are increasingly using AI, so there is some evidence about for the different tasks, and I remember that France and also Germany are using AI to analyze online job vacancies on green skills. So yes, and that is certainly an area which I would guess that more and more PES will come to analyzing online job vacancies where AI instruments can be applied to analyze also other instruments like text mining. I think that is the approach in Germany as well. So there, and I think Luxembourg also applied some language tools. So yes, of course, that is absolutely the road to go. I think in the future. Yeah, I hope I answered.
Thank you. No, that's excellent. Thank you very much, Nicola. Again, we're unfortunately we need to sort of move on to a couple of final areas on the agenda. But the two questions we've got there, very, very appropriate for our colleague from Poland. She will get back to you with an answer to that kind of side of the meeting. Both very important issues, and she will be very happy to clarify those for you. I'm now going to briefly bring in a couple of colleagues, one from the Public Employment Service in Norway and one in Estonia, to actually ask them a few questions, one or two questions about how they're going to take forward some of the very useful insights from this morning. So perhaps first, Hilde from Norway, would you mind just sharing us for a couple of minutes, maybe, things that you found, a couple of things you found particularly useful from the toolkit, and what you think in your public employment service you may well be really prioritising taking forward. So just perhaps a couple of observations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eamon. And at NAV, we are actually currently exploring possible ways to better systemize and possibly improve our more holistic approach to sustainability in the labor market, because so far our activities is more ad hoc and fragmented. And then maybe two things from today's network webinar and the toolkit to mention. We have heard today, and also we see in the report, a lot of practical examples and practices. And this is, of course, informative, but the reason maybe to mention it here today is that altogether this also in a way shows the state of the art and will obviously help us to set realistic ambitions, because this is maybe one of the challenges in the end. You can, yes, you need to be realistic. What can we actually obtain within the resources we have? And the second one is more to Nicola's presentation of the toolkit, that I found that this very clear and relevant structure of the toolkit will help us a lot. It's well organized around the core tasks for an employment service, and as such it can serve as a practical framework to assess the current activities, and then also to identify possible improvements, and of course in the next step maybe also to integrating sustainability goals with our existing plans. Yes, I thank very much the network for taking this initiative to the toolkit, and extend also my thanks to the presenters here today to share your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hilde. It's really gratifying to hear about how much benefit you've got from the event this morning, and building on the work that's been done by the working group and how you can use that in your organisation. May I ask Elena from the Estonian Public Employment Service, perhaps again, for just a couple of minutes reflections on how you may be seeking to build on some of the tools and learnings that you've actually heard about this morning, and I'm sure before this event from some of your discussions with colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this opportunity. And definitely Toolbox showed very clear evidence that all member states, they have their own practices and own experiments how to implement green skills. And it seems that the area is still very largely diverging because there are so very multiple practices around that topic. We also evidence that it is crucially important to have green skills approach, or to deal with the green skills. It should be on strategical level in PES. Otherwise, it's going to be just a hobby project. So it's very important to have it on a top level to be set as a priority. Maybe more on a more practical vibe is that we found very valuable definitions, especially we got confidence to use, for example, CEDAFOP definition of green skills, and also confidence in using ESCO classification to identify green skills. Also, we found that there is a lot of cooperation activities going on in the field of green skills in all PES and other stakeholders, but these are very hard to replicate. So it's again shows high diverse is the topic. We would be happy to replicate some nice practices, but the context of each member state is very, very different. And also we learned, and definitely will implement when we start to deal with green skills in more systematic way, to include employers as soon as possible to the process, because we cannot do, or let's say our activities will be just partially covered if we don't include employers at the early stages. So these are our findings. But a lot of good examples and very useful material, very well organized. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Again, thank you very much, Elena. Very, very helpful observations. Colleagues would have noticed, unfortunately, we've had to kind of not have the final Slido this morning because, unfortunately, time, as ever, in these very interesting discussions is our enemy. So I think we now need to be moving to closing this discussion. I think there's probably no more important question than how we can somehow kind of reconcile economic growth with environmental protection and combating climate change. So all of our discussions are on these network webinar series addressing very, very crucial, pertinent issues. But I wonder whether there's one that's ever going to be more important than the challenges we've discussed this morning. So with that in mind, I'd like to very much thank all of our speakers for their really splendid inputs. They managed to convey some quite complex technical issues in a very clear and helpful way. Thank you very much for your questions. That we will be able to get back to you with questions that haven't been answered, the ones you posted in the Slido following the webinar. As ever, we will be producing a short flash report, which will be uploaded to the PES Network YouTube channel, and this will be shared with the participants. The Green Skills and Jobs agenda will be explored throughout the PES Network work programme going forward over the next year. And as particularly, we would have loved through Slido to have heard about your views on how you will kind of perhaps apply these tools in your own public employment services. We very much encourage you to keep exchanging your thoughts and your reflections with colleagues through the PES Network LinkedIn group. And on that, there are many, many subjects that you could consider: aligning policy and strategy, operational integration, staff training, building staff capacity for using the tools, employer engagement, as our colleague from Estonia mentioned, absolutely crucial. How we use data to monitor the situation, applying to the regional and local level some of the national and indeed European-wide instruments, and what are the challenges and considerations we have to think about in terms of applying the tools and taking this agenda forward. Before finally handing over to our colleague Isabel from the Commission to formally close the event, I'd like to mention that we are very, very grateful for all of your inputs, and Isabel will now be summarising and closing. Okay.
Thank you, Iman. Just few words to say that the main lessons for us is that we need strong taxonomies and taxonomy that are usable and in each countries in Europe. And we have seen with Nicola that working in close partnerships at local, regional, and national level is really key. And one other recommendation we can have is to implement the skills-based approach in the matching system of the PES. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've run over by a couple of minutes. Apologies for that, colleagues, but thank you very much for your participation. And we look forward to discussing other issues again in future webinars. Thank you very much.